Okay, we're back again. It was getting quite thick and fast there, so I've been told to slow it down a little. Digital business strategy. This is, to me, the most abused term, the digital strategy within an organization. So we'll just take a look at the highlights here in the fields of strategic management, marketing strategy, and business strategy. Digital strategy is the process of specifying an organization's visions, goals, opportunities, and related activities in order to maximize business benefits of digital initiatives to the organization. Nowhere in any explanation that I can find does the term digital strategy, digital business strategy, transformation strategy ever mention tactics. Social media, websites, that's not what this is about. This is about understanding the near-term challenges of the organization, where it needs to go to in order to accomplish its vision, and of course, how it plans to get there. But the tactical response, which is our immediate knee-jerk desire to move to tactics, is not strategic in its own right. An architect makes plans. They're not strategies. They're complex. They require specialist knowledge. And without them, we go nowhere. But we don't ask the architect to come up with their strategy. Search engine optimization is a tactic. Social media engagement is tactical. Website design is tactical. And I ask you to park the tactics until the strategy is done. I've taken a few examples of what I believe to be bad strategies. The first one that I've come up with here is we shall increase our sales by 20% and we will increase our page impressions by 10,000 per month. These are numbers that are plucked out of the air. There's no evidence for them, but quite often management say, well, I need to set targets. We need to set targets where we understand there is evidence and an ability to perform some form of calculation that will say we need to increase the market share by taking it from some particular place, or we need to perform better in the expanding market, or we need to perform in a contracting market. But simply picking numbers is not strategy by any definition of strategy that I can find. Number two is operational effectiveness. This is an old Harvard Business Review article, I've linked to it here, that explains back in the industrial days, pre-internet, that many people took the machinery within their operations and made it more effective. They made their conveyor belts convey better. And what the author of the HBR report goes on to say is that these are simply the chips you need to play to be at the table. They don't necessarily create competitive advantage. Why? Well, because anyone can take advantage of the same. So we can't look at integrating our website with our content management engines, with our CRM systems, with our payment gateways. That's just the chips to play the game. It's not strategic. It is tactical in its own right. The third and the most often confused is interwoven tactics. This is simply where we're starting to take a look at customer journeys and explaining and plotting these customer journeys by way of digital tools that they're going to use. This is not strategic. This is not accomplishing competitive advantage or achieving much for the organization. We haven't diagnosed enough yet to understand if these tactics are going to solve the problems. And last but not least, my favorite example is we shall use social media to better service our clients and to gain more customers. I've included a picture of a waffle because I really can't think of anything else to include here, but the point is that these power statements that we come out with don't give direction when we're planning our strategies. So let's delve a little bit deeper into what is a strategy. We've now found out what it's not, but what is it? A wonderful book by Professor Richard Rummelt called Good Strategy, Bad Strategy. It was a 2011 bestseller. Explains that strategy comes from identifying one or two critical issues in the situation. The pivot points that can multiply the effectiveness of our effort, and then focusing and concentrating our actions and resources upon them. There's 3 different sections to this statement. Strategy comes from identifying the 1 or 2 critical issues in the situation, the stuff that's preventing us from progressing towards our desired vision. The pivot points that can multiply the effectiveness of effort. And what Rumbold is talking about is that inside every organization there are assets that we can get and we can leverage in order to help us overcome those near-term challenges. And the third thing he says we must do is focus all our actions and resources to solving those problems using those leveraged assets. He goes on to explain that a strategy isn't a strategy unless it has a strategy kernel. There are 3 key areas to a strategy kernel. The first is the diagnosis of the situation. Asking why. Why has that not happened? But why? It's painful, but ask why 5 times, you start to get close to the diagnosis. The second thing we need is a guiding policy. And the third is coherent action. Let me give you a quick example. You happen to have a surgical need and the doctor makes an examination. They diagnose the problem. Their guiding policy to the surgeons happens to be, well, this could be treated in one of 3 ways. The problem is, and it defines the problem, and it could be treated with better diet, it could be treated with drugs, or it could be treated with surgery. Here is my guidance. The surgeon then takes the coherent action based upon their knowledge. Inside an organization, the leadership, you, must do the diagnosis process. We must supply guiding policy. And I've yet to meet a good technologist or a good marketer that can't take it from there. If we go too early and we give the marketers and technologists a budget and a laptop and a round of applause and tell them off you go, the default position is incoherent action. So now we understand the role that we must play. The lens of digital is upon our strategy. This is a digital business strategy. We must provide diagnosis and guiding policy, and this then leads to more coherent action. So what's this big data thing all about? Well, here's the Wikipedia explanation once again. Extremely large data sets that may be analysed computationally to reveal patterns, trends, and associations, especially relating to human behaviour and interaction. So what does that mean? Let me put it into a case in point with a tiny case study here. If we happen to be a field engineering business happens to capture lots of data. As does your business, as does mine. All businesses are now capturing an incomprehensible amount of data. You may not know it, you may not see it, but every transaction that someone has with us on a website or an email, it's all data. The field engineering business has a particular problem. It has always grown up with being able to do fault logging, and it takes the data that is generated when somebody logs a fault and it deals with it. The fault happened in the past. The response is in the present. But that's all well and good in the old era, before they had large amounts of data. With new technology, they can now act in the present. Using this technology, the field engineering company can see where all of their assets are, all of the people, and deploy them in the right area, in the right place at the right time. But what big data allows us to do is to take all of this data that we know and integrate it with other external sources. So for example, the field engineers are looking after an electricity network. In the evenings, the temperature falls. The data starts to show that over periods of time of cold weather, the faults happen to rise. It can now predict where the fault is going to be before it actually happens. And it can now reasonably predict where you should be placing your assets and how much overtime and how many engineers you need to have in the right place at the right time. This produces wonderful benefits for the owners of the electricity network and much more manageable opportunities for the field engineering company. It also gives competitive advantage when they adopt this and their competitors don't. So the term big data is quite amorphous, and I'm going to show you a video now from the BBC from January 2016 that explains it much better than I can. But if we adopt and understand that it's there, and we happen to plan our strategies that we're looking for something new, big data comes up all of the time. It helps us with data-driven decision making. It's at the cornerstone of writing transformation strategies, and it is at the cornerstone of organizations that wish to change using evidence to make data. Enough from me. I'll take a little break and I'll let you watch this wonderful video produced by the BBC.
All of us are producing data all of the time without even knowing it. The frequency and quantity with which it's being generated have earned it the title big data. There's so much of it that companies are now springing up with the sole aim of sifting through it.
So I think the best use of big data, ironically, is to make it as small as possible, because consuming all of that information is impossible. So I think a lot of technologies and successful desktop applications can package big data in a way that actually takes the mass and sheer size out of the equation and just points you to the right information at exactly the time that you need it to make the right decision.
In 2013, under a quarter of digital data was considered useful. By 2020, it will be over a third.
Thank you very much indeed. Here at Davos, collecting business cards is very much part of the way that people interact. But what businesses do with this information, how they collate it and how they use it, even whether they feel free to pass it on, these are becoming very relevant questions.
Some of the algorithms are getting so sophisticated in their ability to not just predict where we're going to be, what we're going to like, etc., the choices we'll make, but to be able to use that to influence us. And I think it's in that moment that I become uncomfortable.
The explosion of accessible data has many positive applications, particularly in the health sector. The challenge is to control how it is used.
I think what we need to do is move to a world where people who use data professionally have systems which we call accountable systems. Those systems, they track not only what you're doing with the data, but why you're doing it. And so, for example, as a patient, I could go to a hospital website and not only download my data, but also see a list of all the people that have actually looked at it outside there and see what's going on.
In Davos, business leaders place a premium on the privacy of their conversations. Many consumers now want the same level of control. Tanya Beckett, BBC News, Davos.